You're watching Open Agenda.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me is Mr. Mike Goldberg from Del Mar and Dr. Joe Venosa. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you all covered extensively last week the same main topic that was just at the county council meeting this past Tuesday, February 4th, which is the NAACP and the ACLU's lawsuit against the county and the Board of Ed. Talk a little bit about, just exactly how the meeting went, and there was a public comment section too, right?
Yeah, sure. So the meeting featured a pretty extensive presentation by Mr. Kevin Karpinski, the attorney for the county, and he went over not only the essence of the case and the history behind it, but the specific nature of why the 1965 Voting Rights Act was violated according to this particular situation.
Plaintiffs also alleged a claim under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 that the current 5-2 composition also violated the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. The purpose of the Voting Rights Act is to ensure that the political process is equally open to all individuals, including minority voters. And to that end, the Supreme Court in Thornburg versus Jingles set forth a number of factors that the court looks at in determining whether there is a viable potential Section 2 violation of the Voting Rights Act. A trial of this kind of case costs millions of dollars. To go ahead and, in addition, under 42 U.S.C. 1988, if the plaintiffs were to prevail on their case, the county is responsible for paying their attorney's fees as well. Rather than head down that path, I think the county took a very prudent course of action, which was to explore whether this could get resolved without expending that type of taxpayer money and potentially exposing the county to a significant amount of taxpayer dollars going to pay attorney's fees for not only the defense but also for the plaintiffs litigating this case. The plaintiffs provided a map to the county. That map was analyzed by the county in-house. The map was basically modified, made some modifications to that map, and the plaintiffs have agreed that the 7 districts that are set forth that were proposed by the county would satisfy their concerns about a possible violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and that would be the map that would be used moving forward if indeed the parties were able to reach a settlement.
He gave a pretty good summation of it, the specifics about the demographic data, the nature of the districts, and then after his comments were made, representatives from the group of plaintiffs spoke.
The lawsuit is about more than just moving lines on the map or redistricting. It's about justice. It's about representation, and it's about engagement. The purpose of the lawsuit is for the county and school board to acknowledge the unfairness of the election system they employ and to reform it from the 5-2 system to a racially fair system of 7 single-member districts.
Now, Mike, you covered a lot of the information that was going to be addressed at this county council meeting on our episode last week. Was there any surprises? Was there anything that was new, or was it exactly just what was laid out in the brief book?
Well, we were able to get a little bit more information from the attorney, Mr. Karpinski. I think that it may have been a surprise to many county residents. They really didn't have a whole lot of prior notice that this was even going to be happening, the redistricting. I was surprised there wasn't a lot of pushback on that, quite frankly. I'm kind of glad there wasn't. The hope was, many of us hoped that they would forestall a vote for a couple of weeks until the general public could become more informed. But they did choose to take the vote immediately.
Mr. Karpinski did talk about that there was a little bit of time of the essence in order to get this settlement, because this lawsuit, I mean, right now is going to cost the county $125,000 and the Board of Education $10,000, but it could actually escalate much more. He actually gave the example of Baltimore County being at nearly $1 million already.
Baltimore County has one of these cases pending. It's still in litigation, and it's been stayed pending review of a case before the Supreme Court. But the fees in that case are over $900,000, and they got through one preliminary hearing. So, again, once these cases start getting ramped up, they become very expensive.
Sure, and if the case were to be adjudicated rather than settled out of court, who knows what it would have cost, but it probably would have been in the six-figure range or more.
And as he stated, that has no guarantee that it would go the county's way, quote unquote, or even you would get a resolution in any in any quick time frame.
In fact, it seems that the greater likelihood would be that that the courts would not rule in favor of the county.
Correct.
So they would have spent a heck of a lot of money and still had the same outcome.
Yeah. So what role did the 2021 redistricting committee maybe play into the NAACP's decision to sue the county?
Well, based on the comments that I heard, as well as some of the video that the members of the public can watch on PAC 14 from that redistricting commission, there were concerns brought up, I believe, by Dr. Kel Nagel, because he was a member of the redistricting commission, so that the proposed lines could be used in a future lawsuit that violates the Voting Rights Act.
So these are the lines that were drawn shortly after the 2020 census.
Correct.
That supposedly we were supposed to use for the next 10 years.
Yes.
The next 3 election cycles. Obviously, we're going to use some different ones now for the next election. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we know Mike Dunn was on that committee.
I believe so.
And Julie Giordano, before she was county executive, was on that committee, right?
Most certainly.
So is this part of the same disconnect between the transparency and the public access to government? Is this another example of the same situations we've seen?
I think you could make the argument that it certainly doesn't appear as transparent as it could be. I mean, those were public meetings. They weren't necessarily advertised in an aggressive way. And certainly, I didn't see the commission go out of its way to really engage the public. I would make the argument personally that I don't necessarily think those two individuals you mentioned are necessarily proactive in talking about groups that have historically not been part of the voting process.
And we haven't heard anything from them since this lawsuit came about a little over a year ago.
No.
So, the outcome is that for the next election cycle, we're going to, in Wacomico County, we're going to have 7 districts, no at-large, and the Board of Education districts will mirror the county council's districts. Now, this still, Mike, you spoke about this last week's meeting. This still has to go back in front of the judge for final approval, right?
That's my understanding, that after the parties to this suit come to a preliminary agreement, that it will have to be endorsed by the judge, I believe, through what's called a consent decree.
Mm-hmm. Well, and at the next county council meeting, they actually have to move this money from the general fund, from the taxpayers' fund,
Yes,
to pay for this. So I think there's also a chance if someone wanted to, the February 18th meeting, you may get more information about how this was going to, be tied up, buttoned up, so that we know that we're at the finish line.
and it will come from the general fund. The insurance coverage will not pay the fees that are the fees and costs that the NAACP et al. is requesting.
Well, I want to talk about one other topic that came up in this segment. During the public comments, a lot of folks came to the podium and talked about the biodiesel facility on Hickory Mill Road and Atkins Road. There wasn't a lot of understanding. It's not as if the county council or even the executive approved this. It was permitting from the Maryland Department of Environment. You live in a neighborhood that a little over a year ago, you all were blindsided by some information you didn't know was happening without permits. What was the sense of the folks that came up to the podium to speak? Obviously, I think all of them spoke against this.
I can only describe them as being livid, and I certainly understand, considering that
That's a good word.
there's the potential for groundwater contamination, and people being exposed to various pollutants in their homes, many of which are very, very close to this site. I very much sympathize with them. They were pretty angry and spoke out very vociferously.
This property is not zoned for such an operation. Raj Kathoria lied to the county about his intent for this property. However, the state didn't communicate properly with the county, and this guy was given his building permit before he ever technically owned the property. Though the county sent a letter saying this property wasn't for appropriate use, the county's planning and zoning allowed his request for appeal. That makes no sense. This property is in a neighborhood with approximately 80 nearby homes.
Well, there's two key aspects for this right now. One, there's been a stop work order issued. So at least work at the site should cease for now. On March 27th, which is a Thursday, the Board of Appeals, now this is not Planning and Zoning. Planning and Zoning is their own board. This is the Board of Appeals where you would appeal a zoning variance, is having a meeting 6 p.m. in room 301. This is a committee that only meets when necessary. Obviously, it's necessary. There's not been an appeal filed yet. The owner of the property has until the end of February to file the appeal. But we would assume that they've spent $7 million building this facility. It would go to the Board of Appeals. So anyone out there who has a opinion about this or a stake in this, room 301 at 6 p.m. Thursday, March 27th, big day. So in our next segment, I'd like to talk, another big topic was about Councilman Shane Baker. I'd like to spend a little bit of time really kind of talking about just exactly what happened to him and what resolution, where he's at right now. Yeah. So will you stick around with us?
Absolutely.
All right. So when we come back, we're going to discuss the rest of the county council meeting. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. I've asked Mark Carroll from Sharptown to join us for this segment. Gentlemen, I want to talk a little bit about the situation that came up with Councilman Shane Baker. It seems like his name's been run through the mud, and I know both of you have experience with this. Mike, Shane talked about this in his comment.
On January 21st, I'm at home. And I can tell my ex-wife is rather upset. Somebody had called her and wanted my Life 360 location. Well, me being a retired deputy sheriff, I find that disturbing. I wanted to know who called her. She tells me it's Deputy Keith Newton with the Worcester County Sheriff's Office. So I immediately did the right thing. I contacted Worcester County. The command staff didn't want to get involved. They said, look, he's got a right to call your ex-wife. Nothing we can do about it. I sent him a text message. I said, listen, if you continue to contact and harass me and stalk me, I'm going to tell your wife some things that you're probably not going to want me to tell your wife. So then a battle starts to pursue text, and he makes the comment. He goes, you know what? You're overdue for a peace order. And I told him via text, I said, just make sure when you go in there and swear under oath that you tell the truth, because you got to swear under oath to get a peace order. Every time you testify in court, you got to swear under oath. Because I knew I hadn't sent anything threatening. On the 22nd, I started getting all these texts from all my friends, all these phone calls. Man, you're in trouble. You got a peace order. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, it's all over Eastern Shore undercover. So people start sending me screenshots. They're trying to locate Shane Baker and Worcester County Sheriff's offices and Wycomico. Kind of the way I took it, implying I'm on the run. I've been made aware that there's a court date at 9 o'clock. I'll be there. The deputies can serve me when I walk in. Contact my attorney. He says, look, you probably need to be there in the morning for this hearing. That's the temporary. So I set my alarm clock for 4 o'clock. Wasn't expecting to come home that early. My attorney tells me, so as do other fellow law enforcement officers that work in the courthouse, said, look, 99% chance it's going to be granted. Most of the time they grant the temporaries until it goes to final. Go to the final hearing, and lo and behold, the judge says, and I don't want to misquote it, that there was no evidence for either one of them. The disturbing part, or at least it disturbs me, probably will disturb you guys too. I noticed on the peace orders, it looked like the same handwriting on both. Now I'm not a handwriting analysis guy, and I can't say the same person filled out them both, but I picked up on that. I'm like, it looks like both same person. And then, as I'm talking to my attorney, I'm like, some of these things in here aren't true. And he had to swear under oath, and he's a current deputy sheriff at Worcester County Sheriff's Office. And it came out in court. We had 6 or 7 hours worth of court, and I was able to produce every text. And he said, this was said, and I'm like, here's the proof. Look at it. All in all, that day, Mr. Earl Campbell is there to testify on Keith Newton's behalf, retired law enforcement. Bob Harris, who is the chief of police for the town of Pittsville, shows up in uniform, sits down beside Keith. Now, I wonder why he would do that. Looks good to have a cop sitting beside you. One would think, well, why don't you file a complaint on him? I'll show you how politics works. That was put on social media. That person, that's Bob's boss. This was before I had my final peace order. So why call Bob's boss? What do you think he's going to tell me?
Isn't that this individual that's filed to run for county council too?
I've heard that he has said.
Yeah.
What is his title? Is it town commissioner?
Town commissioner, but he's also an Ocean City police officer.
Oh, yeah, he is. He's also a police officer, ladies and gentlemen. Well, they didn't even let Mr. Campbell testify. They said he had no information to provide. Ben Parsons. Now, these guys are current, 2 of them, current deputy sheriffs. So we went through the court hearing, and, you know, I was appalled that Bob Harris would come in there in uniform, not testifying for something for the town of Pittsville, not testifying for something in his role. He came there in uniform to testify with Keith Newton. So it comes out in court that we wanted to know, why did Mr. Newton want to know my location? He says J.C. Richardson called him. J.C. Richardson's a former deputy. Says J.C. Richardson called me and wanted to know your location. Now, I want people to start connecting the dots. It's all over with. It's thrown out of court. But it's concerning that there was false information put in that peace order, and he swore under oath. This guy's considering making a run for sheriff of Wycomico County. Look at the connections. Mr. Campbell, again, and these are facts. I can prove this. Anything you all want to see, I can see. Mr. Campbell, campaign contributor to a certain individual. Mr. Richardson, campaign contributor to a certain individual. Mr. Richardson knows that Keith Newton's contacting my ex-wife and asked for my Life 360 location. Ladies and gentlemen, these are either retired cops or current deputy sheriffs or chiefs of police. And I find this very concerning that this happened. Now, I made a decision because I just wanted to get away from it. I know Worcester County Sheriff's Office knows about this. I know they know. And I was going to go down there and I was going to file a complaint because there's something in law enforcement called being bradied. So if I go to court and I get caught lying in court and they can prove it and I'm bradied, that always has to be disclosed every time I testify, and pretty much it ruins your police career because you're not a credible witness. I've been through enough. Mike Goldberg back there has been through enough. Several of these councilmen have been through enough, and it doesn't stop. I mean, prior to this, when I did work at Worcester County, I went through 2 internal investigations, both exonerated, connect the dots, and I'm not going to go into who filed and all that, but all these dots keep getting connected. But it did cost me $4,000. That's what it cost me, because I wasn't going to go in there unprepared.
In the past 2 years, I've seen, at this point, countless examples of retaliation against council members, county employees whose opinions don't align with somebody else's. I don't know, we're 3, 4, 5 peace orders. I've lost count. There's accusations of bribery, conflict of interest, corruption, charter violations. Council members have had hate mail sent to their homes. The executive statement on that was you need to take that with a grain of salt. I think the term lawfare was used earlier tonight. I agree with that.
he had a temporary peace order approved against him, and then he had to go in front of a permanent for a permanent hearing. Can you explain to me a little bit about what is a temporary peace order?
Well, a temporary peace order can be issued after the initial interim peace order within 2 days. So 2 days later, Mr. Baker had to appear in court for a hearing for a temporary peace order. The temporary peace order was granted, has a very low threshold of evidence if the judge is at all concerned, based on very little evidence that a threat potentially exists. Then the hearing for the permanent peace order was held a week later, and there is a higher standard of evidence for the permanent peace order. You have to meet a threshold of a preponderance of evidence. So there's a full hearing on that. That in this case, Mr. Baker's case, took all day.
Well, what's a typical cost of a
It varies. It depends on your attorney. It can cost anywhere from a couple of $1,000 flat fee up to $5,000 or even more. Just depends on your attorney, how busy he is, and how much money he thinks he got in your pocket.
Well, and whether you're guilty or not, it's that fee.
Yes, it's a flat fee.
So, Mark, before we get into Shane's situation, I mean, you've come under attack from the executive and the executive's office.
Yes.
Explain a little bit to folks, like, just what was that feeling like? Like, what was the question you were asking yourself?
Well, it was difficult, and for anybody who isn't aware, our Recreation and Parks Department just raised questions about how a park was being planned.
The West Metro
The
Corps
West
park,
Metro Corps.
2 years ago.
Yes. The county executive did not like that we were asking questions, so she had a private meeting with the president of the commissioners, Sharptown, and tried to intimidate him into firing me from the volunteer position that I'm in. She actually showed up to our next meeting.
Okay.
Which is very unusual for a county executive to show up to a local town recreation meeting. And she upset everyone, was very argumentative, told everyone in our meeting that the county was not going to support Sharptown anymore, that we had poisoned the well, is the term that she used over and over again. And it was very distressing for everyone. She accused us of falsifying our minutes to establish a narrative.
Did you falsify your minutes? No. Okay.
But I will say...
Have you ever?
No, and okay. I take such accusations so seriously.
So the accusations made against you were untrue, but it was really up to you to prove, basically your innocence. And
yes.
And that influence from the executive's office was used right at the core of your support group, right?
Yes. And the most troubling part is that I kept expecting something to happen, like someone to stand up for us or stand up for me and come in and say, well, you can't go into a public meeting and accuse a group of people of falsifying government documents. You can't try to have a volunteer fired from their position for not doing anything wrong other than having an opinion. And it never happened.
So you're really looking for accountability.
Yeah, and for a while, I stopped talking about it for a while, and I still don't talk about it that often because in a way, I guess it worked because it felt like no one cares, and it was like the more I wanted something to happen, the less likely it was to happen. So I let it go, and with these situations here, my hope is that as this is going up the chain, more people are paying attention and maybe more people will care. I'm a nobody, and then when she's going after council members and things like that, maybe people will start caring because this isn't going to stop.
Well, if we talk about some accountability, Mike, I want to go back to your situation before we circle back to Councilman Baker's. A peace order was put against you back in the summer and you had to defend yourself.
I did.
And the process of that came out the same. This one was withdrawn.
It was withdrawn because there was indisputable video evidence that what was alleged never occurred.
So in that situation, has your case, was it tried like through social media? I mean, we reference very often this agreement that the county executive has with Eastern Shore Undercover and Earl Campbell. And although many folks in the county are blocked from seeing his Facebook, he is contractually signed with the county executive to disseminate information. Yes. in your case and Councilman Baker's case, is there a similarity to how the public information was coming out?
Oh, absolutely. And with respect to Eastern Shore Undercover, in relation to my case, he certainly reported a lot about it up until the time that it was never finally adjudicated because the peace order was withdrawn on the day of the hearing for the permanent peace order. I wrote to Earl Campbell, the proprietor of that tabloid Facebook page, and advised him of the outcome so that he could not claim that he was unaware of the outcome, but it was never reported. In Shane's case, Councilman Baker's case, he did actually report it 3 days later. It didn't come out until Monday, I believe, when his hearing was the prior Friday. It was reported on his Facebook page. It was not reported on his regular web page, though. So, and it was buried on the Facebook page.
Well, and he brings up in his comments at the council meeting on Tuesday, and you were at his hearing
Yes,
as well.
I was.
There were sworn police officers, right? I mean, these are folks who were testifying against him.
They were.
Did any of them have actual knowledge of any threats that Shane made? Or was this more of a character assassination?
It was a character assassination, in my opinion. There was a lot of hearsay there. Many of them posted on Facebook. And what's particularly disturbing about their posts is that there's that 1 week period between the hearing for the temporary peace order and the permanent peace order. So the case was still being adjudicated, and yet they are making public statements on social media that could have potentially poisoned the well a bit. I think that was entirely inappropriate. And one of the witnesses, who is a police officer, appeared in uniform as a witness. Now, this is entirely inappropriate unless he's there as a witness in a case that he's actually involved in. In other words, if he had investigated a criminal act, then it is appropriate for that police officer to appear in uniform. But this had nothing to do with that. Essentially, he was a character witness, and I do believe this was done intentionally in order to try to sway the judge. An officer in uniform does have, on the surface at least, some credibility. Earl Campbell was also there of Eastern Shore Undercover to testify. Interestingly, after he was sworn in, the judge decided not to permit his testimony because he had absolutely nothing relevant to say.
In direct correlation to this case.
In correlation to this case.
And ultimately, the peace order was denied.
The peace order was denied.
Has that stopped the social media flow of misinformation from coming out against Councilman Baker?
Absolutely not. There continues to be a great deal of chatter on social media. And what's very disturbing is that some of this is coming from senior county employees who report directly to the county executive. So the reign of terror is continuing.
Well, so in Councilman Baker's situation, he has senior executive employees. In your situation, you had a senior engineer, and in your case, you had the executive go directly to your county commissioners or your town commissioners.
Yes.
So is the lesson here is that, hey, if you want to speak publicly against our current executive government in this county, that be prepared $3,000 to $5,000.
You better put a helmet on and a flak jacket because she's going to come after you. In my case, she came after me. Well, not necessarily the county executive herself, but either the executive or her senior employees have tried to have me arrested with no cause. And of course, with respect to the accusations of assault were provably untrue due to video evidence from PAC 14. So, and they've done the same thing to Councilman Baker several times. All the same group of people in the same circle that are in low Earth orbit around the county executive. And it's very disturbing that we have to deal with our government like this. It's said that when the people fear their government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, then there's freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Mark?
I was going to say, truth is the first casualty of lawfare.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Welcome back to Open Agenda. Back in the studio with us is Dr. Venosa. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen, we talked about the Shane Baker case, and we've had a chance to hear about some other stories, whether it's you, Mike, or from Mark Carroll. But what do we need to do about it, Joe? I mean, where do we stand right now, and what do people out there who are watching this? What do they need to know to do?
Well, I think the county really is at an important crossroads. We have a real crisis on our hands that, to some extent, goes unnoticed until you get hit by it. We have had numerous private citizens and now elected officials who have been directly targeted and have had local government weaponized against them for the mere act of questioning, speaking out on issues, and voicing concerns about certain topics. And if I'm looking at it as somebody who wants to live here, who wants to move here, who wants to invest here, then the crisis that we face right now in Wicomico County isn't just an abstract thing. It really requires citizens to get involved in a way that they perhaps haven't had to before. For every Councilman Shane Baker that's been targeted, there have been numerous other private nobodies, private citizens, right, who have had to deal with the current crisis that is happening because of the executive system and specifically because of who the current county executive is. We are at a point in which there are legitimate fears, I would say, for people's personal safety.
Absolutely.
Simply because of how local government has been weaponized. And those concerns and those realities are not going to get any better until more of the public gets involved.
So, Mike, when someone says to you that freedom isn't free, and the experiences you've had, especially this past summer, beyond the dollars and cents sign, what else does it cost you? What does it cost you as a private citizen?
Well, you pay a price in many different ways when you stand up to power. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you time. I've spent a heck of a lot of time this past year trying to stand up to the actions of this county executive. And you also wind up living your life always looking over your shoulder, never knowing just what kind of a stunt is going to happen to you next. You just don't know. You have to be aware. We're doing our best on this show to help make the public aware that there is a threat to your safety, to your very freedom and well-being. We need folks to come to county council meetings. Don't pay attention to social media because all you're going to get is a bunch of biased opinion. Most folks simply don't understand the issues. They don't understand the facts. Keyboard warriors are of very little social value on social media. But see what's actually happening at the meetings. Become a part. Get active, and do something to help defend your friends, your neighbors throughout this county.
I think opinions don't cost very much, and they're easy. Taking the time to either come to a meeting. You don't have to speak if you come, but you could, even before you come, you can watch it on PAC 14.
Absolutely.
And I could say, being close with you and being at your hearing for when the peace order was withdrawn, watching still even to this day that there's repercussions, whether it's through social media or just the changes of how you live your life. Thinking about Councilman Baker, who's a retired county sheriff, or deputy sheriff, an elected public servant, and to know that his case, although it was denied, he was also tried in the course of the court of public opinion, and it's still happening, even though his case is adjudicated.
Sure. They're dragging him through the mud. They continue to drag me through the mud, and others as well.
Joe, or Dr. Venosa, I want to say one more thing. We're not asking anyone to have the same political belief as us. We don't share the same political belief system. We're just asking people to be open-minded and find the facts for yourself.
To your point, I think when people look at on individual levels, when they see somebody being attacked, slandered, when they see an unjust act, it kind of taps into something that I think most decent people, unless you're a sociopath, have. In that it appeals to the better angels of your nature. So if I see this man, I don't know him, but he's being wronged or hurt, I'm going to hopefully find it within me to help him. And I think one of the good things about what we've been involved in is that we've come together, we've become really good friends, and we rely on each other in many ways, in part because we've responded to a crisis and to an injustice. And I think if more people become part of that, then that dragon will be slayed, so to speak.
Slowly.
Slowly. It doesn't happen overnight. It's you have to, freedom isn't free, but it also isn't quick.
It is definitely not.
And evil will prevail when good people don't stand up to it.
Correct.
And so I encourage everyone to stand up.
Well, thank you for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back next week with another new episode.
I know what I'm doing, man.